Hello everybody, my name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Hope you're all doing well, but let's not waste any more time and get right into today's malicious compliance stories. Our first story is by Jaguar007. Taxi driver complained that I fiddled with jobs. This happened many years ago now and I almost forgot about it. Experienced controller, we shall call Bob. Idiot taxi driver, we shall call John. I worked as a controller at a very busy taxi firm. On some days when Bob wasn't in, I would be in charge of sending jobs for taxi drivers to pick up. My other colleagues would be answering calls and booking in jobs. Bob and John were really good friends to the envy of other taxi drivers who would complain that John was getting preferential treatment and better jobs. I never said it, but Bob definitely gave better jobs, higher paid fares, to John and plenty of connections. Pick up another customer some houses down or next street from where he dropped off. John would do Bob favors like food and stuff almost every other day. Something happened between the two of them on my couple days off. I never got to the bottom of how it started, but some drivers said it was over a runner, customer who runs away without paying, and some said it was over food. Anyway, because Bob stopped giving the best jobs to John started getting pissed off even more and started to ring our boss, who owned the firm, and complained to him about the controller's fiddling. The next day was my turn in the hot seat since Bob wasn't in. The boss set a rule that night shift drivers start work at 4 p.m. and anybody trying to log in after 5:30 p.m. will be refused. The rule wasn't set in stone since many people had the off days where they could be late and I was chill about it. John tries to log in at 6:40 p.m., so I accept since I'm not bothered. The night is progressing and unbeknownst to me, John rings boss up complaining about the controller fiddling again. A short while later, John comes into base and has a go at me for fiddling with jobs and how I am giving him the lowest fares. I told John I am just releasing jobs where system chooses the closest driver free and sends them the job. He didn't believe me, so he decided to stand behind me and watch. Cue malicious compliance. After dishing out 60 odd jobs to drivers who were ahead of him in the queue and the one driver before him getting a 9-pound job, John is ready to go but doesn't move until a few more jobs come through. I wish I could take a photo of his face when he saw many high-fare jobs, but they were far out and for the drivers clear in that area. John ended up getting a 3-pound job, minimum fare our firm charged. He was bright red and storming out whilst ringing the boss again for me fiddling. But unknown to him and me, boss was already in the back office with my other colleagues and had admin privileges. Able to check login times, jobs accepted, rejected, cleared, and was also able to see John on CCTV standing behind me. John was called into the office by boss and job went to somebody else. Good thing about the boss was he was cool, but he literally took no shoot from anyone. He tore John a new beehole that night for being quite late frequently by the looks of it, and boss also found out that John would log in before 5:30 p.m. sometimes, but put himself on break immediately till 7 p.m. John didn't talk to me on the way out and barely made half the money he would make when Bob fiddled in his favor. Plus side to it all was, other drivers were happy that night. Not directed at OP, but this story goes to show you that don't trust anybody. Somebody who you think might be a friend and works with you behind the scenes to get you some kind of bonus could also very well be the same person that just gives up and starts doing their own thing and throws you under the bus. That being said, knowing how John acted in this story, I'm willing to put my vote on the line that John was the one that soured the relationship between John the taxi driver and Bob the experienced controller. Do you guys agree with me that it probably was John's fault, and are you happy that John ended up losing out on a bunch of fares? Let me know in the comments below. Our next story is by The Plague Doctor 91. Of course I'll wear the face mask, that is scary. I live in a country in Europe that borders up the several other countries. In my country, MC, things like soda is a bit expensive, but if you drive across the border to other country, OC, you can get sodas, beers, etc. for way cheaper. Recently, our borders have opened up again and we can now go to other country to buy cheaper beverages again, among other things. So I decided to drive down there and shop a bit. However, where in my country you don't need to wear a face mask when you shop, in other country you do. I didn't have a face mask, so I ended up taking a motorcycle bandana with me instead. You technically don't need a real face mask, just something that covers your mouth and nose. When I arrived in other country, I noticed that they sold proper face masks inside the store. Or should I say, more or less tight at the entrance to the store. I put my bandana around my neck and started to head in when I hear someone shout behind me. "Hey, you need to wear a face mask to enter that store." I turn around and face her. "But you need to wear a face mask to enter that store." "I know, but put on a face mask or don't go into the store." So I pull the motorcycle bandana up over my nose and mouth. This is where I should say that the part around the mouth is basically a zombie jaw area. So to, for example, a small kid, I could look a bit scary. Karen's eyes widen and she stares at me. "You can't wear that into the store, you might scare the children." "I know, that's why I was gonna buy a proper mask at the reception desk. Now will you please leave me alone so I can do that?" She doesn't say any more, and I walk to the reception and buy a face mask. I saw Karen in the store a few times, but she avoided eye contact. I completely understand why masks are important, and that's why I wanted something better than my semi-sucky motorcycle bandana, but Karen just couldn't let me do my thing. Okay, so in my opinion, this is actually a bit of a tricky story because, although she is a Karen, I'm kind of siding with her on this one. Not in the outright message, but in the sense that you see somebody trying to go into the store during the pandemic and they don't have a mask on. I think the Karen actually had a right to be a little upset about it. And when it was explained, she seemed to drop it. What do you guys think? Am I wrong? Let me know. Our next story is written by thankGandalf. "You've got to tell me when you leave the office." I work at a small accounting firm. My boss, the owner, is a CPA. We have 5 accountants, an office manager, and myself, the administrative assistant, politically correct term for receptionist. My boss had absolutely hated every single bit of the pandemic. He's refused to work from home, but allowed us to work from home 4 days a week at first, then 3 days a week. Now some of us are coming in 3 to 5 days a week, and there are regularly 5 to 6 people in the office. Most recently, he guilt-tripped 2 sick employees not only into coming into the office, but meeting with a client. Most of that is irrelevant, except to convey that things have been tense in the workspace lately. I dread coming into the office, not only because I worry about getting my mom sick, but because my conversations consist mostly of boss man complaining how much he hates work from home and how much we all suck at our jobs because we aren't in the office. We've been doing the exact same amount of output, if not more, since work from home, by the way. I am a smoker. I take 3 smoke breaks in lieu of a lunch. Normally, I let one of the accountants know so they can keep an ear out on the phones while I'm gone. Sometimes I'll even go so far as to forward the calls to my personal phone so no one is bothered. Yesterday, I come back from my first break and he pages my work phone saying, "You have got to tell me when you leave the office." I paged accountant and he wasn't at his desk, and then I paged you and you're not at your desk. "I'm sorry, what did you need?" "That's not important. I need to know if you are not in the office." Mind you, he doesn't ask this of my office manager or any of the accountants, just me. And it's never because some client called and we missed it. There's never an explanation other than, "I didn't know you were gone." Today, I've gone to the bathroom 4 times and I'm on 2 of 3 smoke breaks so far. So, in addition to all of the client calls and appointment notifications, I have probably paged him about 14 times. Normally would be about half that. I just got the most exasperated "yes" I've ever heard in my life, letting him know his next appointment was here, and he has since turned on his do not disturb. Obviously, managers or bosses who take this route don't realize how much of an annoying burden this is to these employees who just want to take a small break. So if I was in OP shoes and I knew that my job was secure enough or I was happy enough having some kind of action against me, I'd have no problem paging them up being like, hey, just letting you know I'm hitting the bathroom right now. And then you wait about 20 minutes and then you're like, hey, I'm going to the bathroom again. It's kind of a rough day. And then another 20 minutes, update, it's worse than I thought. Bathroom again. And you just kind of keep perpetuating it until they finally realize it's not a good idea. Our next story is by ChaosofaMadHatter. You're right, I'm not actually working. This one is short and sweet. I've been having issues with a coworker who has been very passive-aggressive lately. Posted about it elsewhere if you want to hit up my post history. The short of it is she spends a lot of time doing busy work / socializing, and I'm doing my best to just get work done. But she feels like I don't do anything important and I'm way too lazy. At one point, we were very close, but somewhere along the line, she just decided I wasn't a good coworker. I found out about 6 months after the fact that she had been thinking this. She also claims to absolutely hate staying late and having overtime. This is all just to set up the dynamic that has devolved between us. I spend as much time during the day trying to get all the little pieces done so I can leave right on time. I have a puppy at home and have zero desire to stay later than necessary. Coworker likes to talk. A lot. Today, she spent a good hour talking with a supervisor about all the past places they've worked and how it compares to where we are now. We were at shift changeover and I was talking with a second shift guy and he managed to mix up his words in a very comical fashion, making the two of us burst out laughing. She looks over from where she's doing paperwork and asks what's up, and we explain around laughing. And she just kind of rolls her eyes and says, "Oh, I didn't catch that. You know, 'cause I'm actually working. Sorry. Not really. Sometimes I'm sorry though. Not often." Yes, it was phrased exactly like that. I roll my eyes in return. We've got 13 minutes left until clock out and I had finished my paperwork while she had been chatting earlier. However, when clock out came, she was still chugging along. Normally, I offer to help, but you know, she's actually working. And I'm obviously not, so I'm just gonna leave. And so I tidy up my area, say my goodbyes, and leave. 'Cause I'm not actually working. When I checked my email this evening, she had been sending emails out a good half hour after clock out. So from the outside looking in, I don't understand why she needs to just be so moody anyways. As long as everybody's getting their work done and everybody leaves on time and nobody's dragging them down, then who cares if somebody's having a good time and laughing about something? They can't be off laughing and having a good talk because they're not actively working on whatever? She obviously didn't know how far OP was with their work. So in the end, it's kind of very satisfying to see she was there half an hour later because she can't shut up herself, and her hypocritical self was still working well after. And our final story of the day is by Witty Success, left the house as requested, only to be taken to the hospital. So this is a story from many years ago. During summer vacations, my mom would always have my brother and I stay with our uncle in another country in order to learn the language and get some culture. We were about 10 and 8 at the time and weren't really fond of visiting the uncle. He was prone to wild outbursts of anger over the smallest things. We've since found out, 20 years later, it was bipolar disorder. Every year while visiting, we would go on a small trip to neighboring cities or towns. Half the time it was relaxed, but the other half was full of yelling and my brother and I getting into trouble for the smallest things. Example, accidentally dropping a broccoli piece on the ground at dinner. On the last trip to visit our uncle, we went to a small village in the very large and dense woods for a couple of days. My brother and I explored outside, close to the house, and our uncle went with us to a museum. One afternoon in the house, my brother and I were just messing around in our room wrestling and playing pillow fight. Nothing was broken and no one was hurt, but when our uncle found us, he blew his top. We were chewed out and told that if we wanted to behave like animals, we need to leave the house. So we did. We didn't know where we were really, so we just walked around in the woods. My brother and I were upset that each year we visit, it's the same nonsense. We get yelled at for the smallest things, and our uncle tells our mom that we're behaving terribly. We didn't want to go back, and I decided that if we were kicked out, might as well just make it hard for him to find out. My brother and I walked through the woods for hours until it was getting dark. Admittedly, we were lost, but not really frightened. While walking along, we found a dead tree that we ended up breaking for fun, which was a terrible idea. The tree was full of wasps. We immediately ran upon seeing them, but both my brother and I were stung badly multiple times. I could barely hold back tears, and my younger brother started wailing. Within minutes of him crying, we heard voices and saw a couple of police officers running towards us. They said that our uncle had been looking for us and they were called to help find lost kids. They took us back to town and brought us to the hospital to check the stings. There was nothing too serious and we were able to go home with the uncle that day. When my mom found out what happened, she was furious. She couldn't believe that our uncle would just kick us out around dense woods and wait so long to try and find us. Our trip ended up getting cut way short and we went home to our mom. Luckily, we didn't have to spend any more summer vacations with him. I found out later that he was also sneaking money out of my brother and my wallets to pay for things. Our mom gave us this money for our own use and gave him money separately in order to cover all expenses. Cut to over a decade later, we're on good terms now. My uncle has gotten help for his bipolar disorder and we see him at least once a year. This is definitely a difficult situation because I don't think a lot of young kids around that age are going to be able to cope well with somebody that has major anger issues like somebody with bipolar might have. So every summer vacation, these kids have to live with the reality that they're going to visit somebody that blows up at them for things they just don't understand. It's a terribly difficult situation for these kids to have to work through and put up with, and then afterwards it just gets branded as them being the bad ones. So I don't blame OP or their sibling for hating going to these things because I would too. I'm just glad that in the end it did get some kind of diagnosis, got worked on, and they're at some level of relationship. That being said, that's all the stories we have for today, so if you liked any of these stories, let me know in the comments below which stories and why. And if you enjoyed the video today, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't yet, subscribing to the channel. They both help the channel incredibly, so thank you so much for whatever you did. Whether it was liking the video, subscribing, or merely just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me and the Storytime channel. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time on the Storytime channel.